On Tuesday night, October 25th, a frantic call is received by the 911 dispatcher in Union County.
These are her children, and she jumped out of the car, and he took the car with the children, and he's headed toward Chester.
Some guy jumped into a red light with her car with her 2 kids in it.
Susan Smith says she'd been driving in her car in the town of Union with her 2 boys. At an intersection on Highway 49, she claims a black man with a gun jumped into her car. Several miles down the road, she says, the carjacker ordered her out and got away with her 2 sons, 3-year-old Michael and Alex, just 14 months.
He said, I want my mama. He said, Mama, where you going? And I told him, I said, baby, I gotta go, but you're gonna be okay. And I told him I loved him. I hollered I loved him. And then, the guy slammed the door and he took off. And I just felt like such a failure.
Susan Smith first goes to this home, the home where the 911 call was made, Rick and Shirley McLeod.
I've never seen anybody so hysterical, so out of control, so in anguish. I mean, she could barely talk. She could barely hold her body up. And I literally had to hold her in my living room and guide her through what she was really trying to tell me that took place. So
the next day, the search begins for the alleged suspect and the boys. Police put out a description of the man and for the burgundy protege he's said to be driving. Less than 24 hours after the reported abduction, the search goes nationwide. Sheriff Howard Wells coordinates the effort.
With daylight, hopefully we're going to find this vehicle today. We hope, we pray, but we're still waiting.
It's the dawn of a new day in Union, South Carolina, and still no sight of 2 little boys reportedly ripped away from their mother during a carjacking. It happened 2 days ago. Late last night, David Smith, the children's father, pleaded for help.
If you see anything suspicious, if you see a vehicle you think is the one that we're looking for, please notify any form of law enforcement agency and let them know.
Sheriff's Office, Jeff Lawson.
That plea has been answered. Hundreds of phone calls are flooding into the police in Union, some as far away as California and Maine.
We've had sightings for the vehicle. We've had sightings supposedly of the children. We've had sightings of the vehicle and the children. We've had sightings that still put them together. We've had sightings that did not. It's just a common type of information that you have to rule out everything you've got.
But what hasn't been given is that solid clue that'll lead police to the carjacker and 3-year-old Michael Smith and his 14-month-old brother, Alex.
He's coming from Richmond, Virginia.
It's frustrating for police, but they persevere, and so does the community. Wendy Fowler hasn't even met the Smith family, but she says she felt obligated to help out by distributing flyers all over Union County. I don't know if they're hungry, I don't know if they're wet, or whatever. It's just real hard.
This is the beginning of an exhaustive search by hundreds of people. Sled officers, deputies, the highway patrol, and helicopters are brought in. And friends and family begin organizing a search effort.
We're forming groups to go around the immediate area and distribute flyers that contains pictures of both the suspect and of the kidnapped children.
I have your kids on there. I think of them all the time. You just want to look harder and harder, but you can only look so much.
Dan Parks gathered with other searchers at this command post, tired, dirty, and disappointed. Davidson County Sheriff Jim Johnson had just called off the search.
We're going to cease our operation here now.
Frustrating news after a lead that looked so promising. A fisherman thought he spotted the missing burgundy Mazda near Baden Lake. Later, a hunter told searchers he thought he heard a child calling out. Searchers, desperate for leads, descended on the area.
Come on, baby, we got it.
For 12 hours, they used dogs, all-terrain bikes, horses, and helicopters. For many, this had become an emotional effort that ended without a trace of the missing kids.
Volunteers spend hours searching every possible area. Yellow ribbons, symbols of hope, are tied all over the town of Union.
I could do just one thing to bring the babies back.
Then 2 possible leads. A man fitting the description of the suspect robs a store in Salisbury, and police get a tip that the children are spotted around Baden Lake and Highway 49. But these leads fizzle, and attention turns to the parents. Court documents show the mother had filed for a divorce the week before, and that she had been granted permanent custody of the children during the separation.
We've had questions about her story. That's why we've talked to her more than one time.
More questions for the mother, Susan Smith.
Sheriff officials say there have been differences about her whereabouts before and after the carjacking that left Michael and Alex Smith nowhere to be found. Father answered more questions from investigators as well, but so far the searches and questions have turned up with no answers.
The FBI confirms that Susan Smith took a lie detector test. News reports say she failed it, but no official confirmation. And on this day, Susan and David release a video of Alex and Michael. And while the nation watches home video of a mother celebrating her son Alex's first birthday, hundreds of volunteers and law officers search on land, air, and water for the two boys. The search goes through the weekend with no trace of the boys or the car.
The horses led the search this time for 3-year-old Michael and 14-month-old Alex Smith. So far, the searches have been fruitless, and investigators say any clue to help solve this case is needed.
Horses can go down in places and look in places and do more thorough checking than the people on foot.
Volunteers like Eddie Odell say they hope to bring an end to this tragedy. For these horsemen, it's a Sunday well spent and a cause well worth it.
Solely for the children. All I want to do is see them safely back home and back to their parents.
Today's search included the John D. Long Lake. It's been searched before, and frustrated investigators want to be certain that they haven't missed the missing Mazda.
Just muddy water, slick bottom, that's about it. There's nothing else down there. No rocks, a few beer cans, that's about it.
A search like this is very labor intensive. That's because visibility out there is only about 18 inches in front of the diver, and basically they're feeling their way around for a car. Every search anywhere in the county brings out the residents who say every attempt, no matter how repetitive, is worth it.
Whatever it takes, it doesn't matter. If they just find those two kids, it'll be worth it all.
Just think, 2 babies out there. It's a terrible thing.
The search today covered a lake in nearby Lockhart. It also included some wooded areas around Highway 49, the suspected getaway route.
Halloween Monday, and parents in Union are afraid for their own children.
Before this happened, I could let him even go out in the yard and play, and me sit in the house where I could just keep a close eye on him, but now I'm even afraid to do that.
And still, Sheriff Wells has no clues.
We focused in our county, but there's nothing we've had so far to draw us in whichever direction we need to go.
Then, almost a week after the boys disappeared, a family spokesperson tries to dispel rumors that it's all a hoax.
That is something that we are not talking about in the family. We are concentrating on what we have to do to find these children and bring them back home.
Then on Wednesday, Susan and David Smith appear in front of the cameras to make another plea.
I would like to say to whoever has my children that they please bring them home to us where they belong.
Just that morning, the nation thought the case had been solved when Sheriff Wells announced there was a positive lead. But that tip from Washington State turned out to be unrelated.
The search took place here, inside and underneath Susan Smith's house. Across the street, Maude and Catherine Frost saw it all.
Looked like they took a box out of underneath the floor. It looked like it was a box or something.
What do you think of that?
He's got me puzzled.
She's not the only one, because the sheriff, Howard Wells, isn't revealing what was found.
I cannot comment on that. Maybe we will have some information later on in the day.
As the day unfolded, though, there was no official word about Michael and Alex Smith, where they are, or why they were allegedly taken by a carjacker. This morning, the boys' parents appeared on Good Morning America, though, calling the house search routine and praising investigators.
I don't think there's anything they haven't done that they could do. I've just put my faith in the sheriff.
But after 9 days, is the sheriff putting his faith in her?
In this case, until I determine who's a suspect, everybody's a suspect.
There is still plenty of support for the boys and their parents in town, but with federal officials confirming now Susan Smith failed a polygraph for a second time this week, others, even those who know her well, are having doubts.
It's got me all puzzled now, because she failed it 2 times, and there's something wrong somewhere or another.
A crush of people waited anxiously in Union tonight for crushing news.
Susan Smith has been arrested and will be charged with 2 counts of murder.
The murders of her own 2 boys, Michael and Alex Smith, whose disappearance 9 days ago captured the nation's attention. The same two sons Susan Smith pleaded for just this morning.
It's very hard. The hardest part is not knowing, just not knowing.
But authorities say Susan Smith did know. By 4 o'clock this afternoon, crime scene tape was going up around John D. Long Lake, 8 miles away, where submerged in murky water, divers found the missing car. And inside, presumably, the Smith children.
2 bodies were found in the vehicle's back seat. Identities are pending an autopsy.
As her story of a carjacking and abduction apparently unraveled, Susan Smith sat inside her grandparents' house until tonight, when the sheriff, who never publicly called her a suspect, laid the murders of her own 2 children squarely on her doorstep.
Smith is incarcerated at an undisclosed location.
Susan Smith had been a suspect from nearly the beginning. State law enforcement officials here in South Carolina report that it was the inconsistencies in her story, as well as all of this media scrutiny, that led Susan Smith to crack and confess to killing her 2 young sons. Police tell us Smith watched as her Mazda protege rolled into John D. Long Lake. Investigators say the car floated for a while, then flipped over and sunk. Smith's children were strapped to their seats when the car went down.
I don't see how any mother could put their children in a lake and watch them go down and die.
Neither do police. A motive hasn't been figured out, and tonight investigators won't talk about Smith's confession, but townspeople are talking. Robert Sinclair's son Mitchell is a close friend of Smith's. Even he says he had no idea what she had done. Did Mitchell have any idea that the car was at the bottom of the lake? Did she believe him? Did he believe her?
Yeah, she had everybody voted.
I hugged my little boy, and I just couldn't believe that somebody could do that to their children.
Donna Atkinson is still wearing a pin with a picture of little Michael and Alex on it. She and hundreds of others packed the street in front of the Union County Sheriff's Department. People like Lisa and Henry Campbell had hoped for the best, but got the worst.
It's this tragedy. I mean, I have 2 children of my own, and for a mother, there's no reason on this earth for a mother to do that to her children.
I feel for her, I pray for her, and the rest of the family mostly, but my heart goes out.
Along with the anguish people feel for the toddlers, there is anger for Susan Smith, who said all along a black man had taken her children.
Everything come up that's wrong, everything come up that's bad, first thing to do is depict the black man as the epitome of evil.
A sad procession of patrol cars leads a tow truck away from John D. Long Lake. The muddy Mazda protege carried into town. Hope the children might still be alive faded tonight with the sun. At sunset, investigators plunged into the murky water of John D. Long Lake, where they found the car. The same car Susan Smith said was carjacked was submerged less than a mile from where she reported the alleged crime. In the car, 2 children. Tonight, state investigators confirmed the terrible news. The bodies in the car were identified as 3-year-old Michael and 14-month-old Alex. Authorities say this wasn't a carjacking at all. Instead, they say this was murder, and the woman they've arrested is the little boy's mother, Susan Smith. Sarah Jane Parks knows Smith. She cried tonight when she heard the news on the radio.
It's just hard to believe something like this could happen.
How do you feel about this?
Any mother could do something like that.
A search that had prompted leads around the country, an international outpouring of sympathy for the children and their parents, ends just outside of town.